The alien capital burned under two red suns. The sky above the Xyrath Dominion's throne world was never dark, but today it felt heavy. Warships hovered like black shadows over silver towers, and the air carried the low hum of shields and engines. Inside the Imperial war chamber, silence ruled. The floor was made of dark crystal, polished like a mirror, and in its reflection stood a single human soldier. He was alone. His armor was cracked and scorched, and dried marks of battle still covered his chestplate. But his helmet remained untouched. The helmet was smooth, black, and without symbol. No eyes could be seen through its visor. No expression. No weakness. Around him stood the royal guard of the Dominion, tall alien warriors in sharp silver armor, holding plasma spears aimed directly at his heart. They were tense. They had fought humans before. And they knew one thing. Humans never begged. Humans never screamed. And they never removed their helmets. At the far end of the chamber, sitting on a throne carved from white bone stone, was the Empress of the Xyrath Dominion. She was tall and calm, her pale silver skin glowing softly under the chamber lights. Her eyes were sharp and cold. She had ended planets without regret. She had crushed rebellions without mercy. And now, she studied the human in front of her. He had been captured after destroying 3 Dominion battlecruisers alone. He had fought until his ship exploded. He had survived. And when they dragged him into the chamber, he had not said a word. The Empress leaned forward slightly. "Human," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "You stand before the ruler of this galaxy." The soldier did not move. "You destroyed my ships," she continued calmly. "You killed my commanders." Still, no response. The court watched closely. Some aliens whispered to each other in low tones. They had never seen a human up close before. The Dominion had called them animals, savages from a dying world called Earth. Creatures who fought without logic. Creatures who refused surrender even when defeat was certain. But this one stood still. Calm. Controlled. The Empress rose from her throne slowly. Her long royal cloak flowed behind her as she stepped down toward the human. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons. She stopped only a few steps away from him. Her height matched his armored frame. She looked directly at the black visor that hid his face. "You hide behind metal," she said softly. "Are you ashamed of what you are?" Silence answered her. The human did not react. His breathing was steady. No fear showed in his posture. The Empress felt something she did not expect. Not anger. Not hatred. Curiosity. Every species that stood before her trembled. Every prisoner pleaded. This one stood like stone. She circled him slowly, studying the damaged armor, the burn marks, the deep scratches that proved how hard he had fought. "You humans are strange," she said. "You fight wars you cannot win. You protect worlds already lost. You refuse surrender even when surrounded." She stopped in front of him again. Then her voice changed slightly. Quieter. Sharper. "Remove your helmet." A ripple of shock moved through the chamber. The guards stiffened. The court gasped softly. No one had ever seen a human face. Not in battle. Not in death. Their helmets were sealed even after their bodies fell. The Empress crossed her arms behind her back. "This is not a request," she said. "Show me the face of the species that dares to challenge my empire." The chamber became completely silent. Even the distant hum of ships outside seemed to fade. For a long moment, nothing happened. The human remained still. And then, slowly, he moved. One armored hand rose toward the side of his helmet. The guards instantly raised their weapons higher. Energy flickered at the tips of their spears. The Empress did not step back. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The human's fingers touched the seal at the side of the helmet. A soft mechanical hiss echoed through the chamber. The lock disengaged. The sound was small. But in that vast hall, it felt louder than an explosion. The Empress felt her pulse quicken without knowing why. The visor lights flickered once. The helmet began to lift. And in that single moment, every being in the chamber leaned forward. No one breathed. No one moved. Because the human was about to reveal something the galaxy had never seen before. And whatever was beneath that helmet might change everything. If you enjoy powerful sci-fi stories like this and want to see what happens next, gently consider subscribing to this channel so you do not miss the next part of this story. The helmet seal released completely. The black visor rose just enough to reveal a shadow beneath. And the Empress, ruler of 1,000 conquered worlds, found herself holding her breath. The helmet lifted slowly. Not with fear. Not with hesitation. But with control. A final seal released with a soft metallic sound, and the chamber felt colder somehow. The black visor rose above his face, and for the first time in Dominion history, the face of a human was revealed. He was not a monster. He was not deformed. He did not have fangs or burning eyes or scaled skin like the propaganda images shown across the empire. He looked simple. Strong jaw. Scar across his left cheek. Short dark hair pressed flat from the helmet seal. And eyes. Deep blue eyes that did not shake under the Empress's gaze. A quiet wave moved through the chamber. The royal scholars stared in disbelief. The generals frowned. The guards adjusted their grip again as if something was wrong with what they were seeing. Because this was not what they had been told humans were. This face did not match the stories of savage beasts from a dying world. This face looked calm. Too calm. The Empress stepped closer without realizing it. She searched his expression for fear. For hatred. For weakness. She found none. Instead, she saw something else. Focus. Awareness. And something hidden behind those blue eyes. You do not tremble, she said quietly. Her voice no longer echoing with command but with curiosity. The human looked directly at her. I am not here to tremble, he answered. His voice was steady and deep. Clear. Without anger. The entire chamber stiffened. It was the first time a human had spoken inside the capital world. The sound of his voice felt strange. It did not carry rage. It did not carry madness. It carried certainty. The Empress circled him slowly again, this time studying his uncovered face as if he were some rare creature discovered in the wild. You destroyed 3 of my battlecruisers, she said. Yes, he replied simply. You killed thousands. They attacked my people, he answered. No excuse. No apology. Just fact. The Empress stopped in front of him. Your world was destroyed decades ago, she said. Our records show Earth was burned and its survivors scattered. A faint shift passed across the human's expression. Not sadness. Not anger. Memory. You destroyed our cities, he said calmly. You shattered our oceans. You thought that was the end. The court listened closely now. Every word felt heavier than the last. But humans are difficult to erase, he continued. We adapt. We survive. We learn. The Empress narrowed her eyes slightly. You hide in the dark corners of space, she said. Like frightened animals. He shook his head slowly. No. We hid to study you. A ripple of unease spread across the chamber. The generals looked at one another. The Empress's posture changed slightly. What do you mean? She asked. The human's blue eyes seemed almost brighter under the chamber lights. You conquered half the galaxy because no one understood you, he said. You move in patterns. You fight in pride formations. You believe fear is the strongest weapon. He took a slow breath. We learned your language. We studied your biology. We mapped your fleet tactics. We evolved. The word hung in the air. Evolved. The Empress felt something tighten inside her chest. Evolved how? She asked carefully. The human flexed his hand slightly, the armor on his arm shifting with a faint mechanical hum. Your species struggles in high-gravity environments, he said. Your lungs weaken in radiation fields. Your neural response slows under extreme magnetic pressure. A few scholars gasped quietly. Those were classified biological truths of the Dominion species. How do you know this? One general demanded. The human did not look at him. We fought you, he said simply. We died against you. And each time, we recorded everything. The Empress felt the ground beneath her certainty begin to crack. You are saying, she spoke slowly, that you changed yourselves. Yes, he answered. We trained our bodies in higher gravity. We modified our ships to operate in radiation storms. We built systems that think faster than fear. His voice never rose. But each sentence felt like a quiet blade sliding across the Empire's pride. We are not the same species you attacked years ago, he finished. Silence followed. Heavy silence. For the first time in centuries, the Empress felt something unfamiliar. Not anger. Not superiority. Uncertainty. She looked into his eyes again, searching deeper now. And there it was. Not hatred. Not revenge. Purpose. You let yourself be captured, she said suddenly. It was not a question. The human did not deny it. Yes, he replied. Murmurs exploded across the chamber. The guards shifted nervously. The general stepped closer to the throne area. Why? The Empress demanded. The human's gaze never left hers. To see if you would choose evolution, he said quietly. Or extinction. The words froze the air in the room. Outside the palace walls, far above the capital world, sensors began to flicker unnoticed. Long-range detection systems started to pick up faint signals at the edge of the star system. Unidentified signatures. Multiple. Moving in perfect silence. Inside the chamber, the Empress studied the human's uncovered face one more time. She had demanded to see what lay beneath the helmet. But now she understood something far more dangerous. The face was not the weapon. The patience was. And somewhere in the darkness beyond her empire's borders, humanity was no longer hiding. The chamber no longer felt like a place of power. It felt like a place of realization. The Empress stood only a few steps away from the human soldier, and for the first time since her rule began, she understood that the being before her was not simply a prisoner. He was a message. The generals were whispering now, their confidence thinner than before. The scholars were sending silent signals through neural implants, checking fleet data, checking star maps, checking anything that could confirm or deny what this human had just implied. The Empress raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent again. You speak of evolution, she said carefully. You speak of survival as if it were a weapon. The human did not smile. For us, it always has been, he replied calmly. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Your empire conquered worlds through strength, he continued. You used fear, numbers, and overwhelming force. That works against species that think like prey. His eyes locked with hers again. We do not think like prey. The Empress felt the truth of that sentence in the way he stood. No shaking hands. No rapid breath. No signs of submission. You call yourselves adaptable, she said. But you were nearly destroyed. Yes, he answered without hesitation. And that was your mistake. A ripple of tension moved through the room again. The human's voice remained steady. When you burned Earth, you believed survival meant physical dominance. You measured victory in ships destroyed and cities erased. You never measured what loss creates inside a species. The Empress narrowed her eyes. And what did it create? She asked. Focus, he said. Unity. Discipline. We stopped fighting each other. We stopped dividing by nation, culture, and old pride. You forced us to become one species. The silence deepened. That was something the Dominion had never achieved. The Empire ruled through hierarchy, through fear, through control. But unity through loss was something different. You rebuilt in secret, the Empress said slowly. Yes, he replied. Hidden in systems your scanners ignored. Inside asteroid belts. Beneath frozen oceans. In radiation fields your ships could not enter. The scholars' faces began to pale. Those were environments the Dominion avoided. Too unstable. Too dangerous. We trained our bodies in gravity twice that of your home world, he continued. We learned to function with minimal oxygen. We enhanced neural pathways to process combat data faster. Not with alien technology, but with our own. The Empress studied him closely. You modified yourselves, she said. We improved ourselves, he corrected calmly. There is a difference. And now, she asked. Now we are no longer reacting, he said. We are deciding. The chamber doors suddenly opened with a sharp mechanical sound. A Dominion fleet officer rushed inside, armor scratched from haste. He dropped to one knee before the throne. Your Majesty, he said urgently. Long-range sensors confirm unidentified vessels entering the outer system. How many? The Empress demanded. The officer hesitated. More than our outer defense grid can track. A wave of controlled panic spread across the chamber. The generals began issuing orders through internal channels. Fleet commanders across orbit scrambled to prepare defensive formations. The Empress did not look away from the human. Is this your doing? She asked quietly. Yes, he answered. No threat in his voice. No triumph. Just confirmation. You came here to distract us, one general snapped. The human shook his head slightly. No. I came to give you a choice. The Empress felt something inside her shift again. What choice? She asked. The human stepped forward one slow step, and the guards instantly raised their weapons. He stopped immediately, hands open at his sides. We could have attacked without warning, he said. We have studied your capital defenses for years. We know your shield timing. We know your fleet rotation schedules. We know your internal political divisions. The generals stiffened at that last statement. But we are not here to erase you, he continued. We are here to end a cycle. Explain, the Empress demanded. You dominate species weaker than you, he said. You destroy what resists. You assume power guarantees survival. He looked around the chamber slowly. It does not. Adaptation does. Cooperation does. Balance does. The Empress felt her certainty tremble for the first time in her reign. You expect me to surrender my empire? She asked coldly. No, he replied. I expect you to evolve it. The officer beside the throne received another urgent signal and looked up with alarm. Your Majesty, he said. The unidentified fleet is not attacking. They are holding position just outside weapons range. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The human nodded once. They are waiting, he said softly. For your answer. The Empress turned slowly toward the massive transparent wall behind her throne. Through it, the stars shimmered. Somewhere out there, silent human ships waited. Not firing. Not retreating. Watching. She demanded he remove his helmet. And in doing so, she had uncovered something far more dangerous than a face. She had uncovered a species that no longer feared extinction. A species that had turned survival into strategy. And now the truth about humans stood clear before her. They were not conquerors. They were not victims. They were patient. And patience, she was beginning to realize, was the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. The capital world of the Zyrith Dominion had never known hesitation. For centuries, every threat had been crushed before it could breathe. Every rebellion silenced before it could speak. But now the stars beyond the palace walls shimmered with something unfamiliar. Waiting. The Empress stood motionless before the massive viewing wall, her reflection faint against the endless field of space. Somewhere beyond the outer defense ring, the human fleet held position. Not attacking. Not retreating. Just watching. Inside the war chamber, the generals argued in low urgent tones. "We must strike first," one insisted. "They are within range of the outer artillery grid," another added. "If we allow them to position further, we show weakness." Weakness? The word echoed through the chamber like a forbidden concept. The Dominion did not show weakness. It demonstrated dominance. The Empress did not turn around. "Report," she said calmly. A fleet commander projected a holographic map into the center of the chamber. Red markers filled the outer system. Human vessels. But something was wrong. "They are not in standard formation," the commander said, confusion in his voice. "They are scattered in small clusters." "Unpredictable spacing," another officer added. "They are not aligned for a direct assault." The human soldier stood quietly where he had been left, guarded but no longer treated as a simple prisoner. His uncovered face remained calm as he watched the holographic display. "They are mapping your response," he said softly. One general spun toward him. "Silence," he snapped. The Empress raised her hand slightly, and the general froze. "Continue," she said to the human. "They are studying how quickly your fleets mobilize," he explained. "How your commanders communicate. How your ships reposition under pressure." A holographic map shifted as Dominion defense fleets launched from orbital platforms. Large triangular cruisers moved into tight spear formations. Heavy destroyers aligned in disciplined rows. Precise. Predictable. Powerful. "They move with confidence," the Empress observed. "Yes," the human replied. "And confidence is visible." A sudden alert pulsed through the chamber. "Outer defense grid engaged," an officer announced. "Warning shots fired." On the holographic map, bright flashes appeared near the human clusters. Energy beams streaked across the darkness. For a moment, it seemed like the beginning of war. Then something unexpected happened. The human ships did not counterattack. They moved. But not backward. Not forward. Sideways. Upward. Splitting apart in patterns that did not follow traditional combat geometry. "They are breaking formation," a general said. "No," another corrected, staring closer at the display. "They are creating new ones." The clusters reassembled into shifting shapes, fluid and adaptive. Dominion targeting systems struggled to lock onto individual ships as they constantly repositioned. "They are using our firing to calibrate their maneuver timing," the human soldier said quietly. "They want to see how fast your weapons recharge." Another alert flashed. "Outer artillery grid overheating." "What?" a commander snapped. "They fired too many rapid bursts attempting to track multiple targets," the officer explained. "The grid is cooling down." The Empress felt the first fracture in the Empire's certainty. This was not brute force. This was analysis. The human ship suddenly surged forward in synchronized motion, not toward the capital, but toward a secondary defense platform orbiting the planet's far side. "They are targeting our supply node," a fleet strategist realized. "That platform feeds energy to the inner shield." Dominion cruisers accelerated to intercept, engines blazing bright against the blackness of space. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's ships were reacting, not commanding. The human fleet split again. Half engaging the intercepting cruisers in brief, precise bursts of energy fire. The other half slipping through small gaps in the defense perimeter. "They are not trying to destroy us," the Empress said slowly. "No," the human answered. "They are demonstrating." A sharp explosion illuminated the holographic map. The secondary supply platform flickered and went dark. Not destroyed. Disabled. Cleanly. Efficiently. They cut the energy transfer line without detonating the core, an engineer reported in disbelief. "They could have destroyed it." But they chose not to. The chamber grew tense as more alerts arrived. Several Dominion ships were drifting, engines disabled but hulls intact. Weapons systems offline. Communications scrambled. They are isolating our fleets, a strategist whispered. Separating command nodes. The Empress turned slowly toward the human soldier again. You are not fighting like conquerors, she said. We are fighting like survivors, he replied. Outside, the Dominion's once flawless formations began to break apart. Officers hesitated before issuing commands, unsure which threat to prioritize. Ships moved out of sync. Timing faltered. And with every miscalculation, the human fleet adjusted instantly. Their movements were not chaotic. They were fluid. Learning in real time. Within minutes, the outer defense grid was fragmented. Not annihilated. But disassembled like a puzzle taken apart piece by piece. This is impossible, one general muttered. No, the Empress said quietly, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. It is evolution. The human soldier watched the shifting battlefield with the calm of someone who had already seen this outcome in simulation countless times. We do not need to break your empire, he said softly. Only show it where it cracks. Another explosion rippled through space, this time closer to the capital's inner orbit. Dominion cruisers retreated to regroup, something they had not done in living memory. Retreated. The word felt foreign in the chamber. The Empress felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her. Her empire had been built on fear and strength. But strength without adaptation was brittle. And brittle things shattered under pressure. Through the viewing wall, she could now see faint flashes of combat reflecting off the planet's upper atmosphere. Her people would soon notice. Her court would soon question. And doubt, once born, was difficult to contain. The human fleet slowed its advance, holding position once more just beyond the inner defensive line. They could push further. They did not. They are waiting again, an officer whispered. The Empress exhaled slowly. Her empire was not destroyed. Not yet. But something far more dangerous had begun. The belief in invincibility was cracking. And once an empire begins to question itself, it never stands the same again. The war chamber slowly emptied as fleet commanders rushed back to their stations. Orders were being revised. Defensive lines were being recalculated. Damage reports continued to arrive in quiet waves of controlled panic. But the Empress did not leave. She stood still, watching the holographic battlefield fade into standby mode. The human fleet remained at the edge of the inner orbit, silent and motionless once again. Not pressing their advantage. Not celebrating. Waiting. Clear the chamber, the Empress said calmly. The remaining guards hesitated. Even the high generals looked uncertain. Now, she added, her voice colder. One by one, the officers bowed and exited. The massive doors sealed shut with a heavy echo. The chamber became quiet. Just the Empress and the human soldier remained. Two leaders standing on opposite sides of a broken certainty. The Empress slowly removed the long ceremonial cloak from her shoulders and placed it across the arm of her throne. Without the royal garment, she looked less like a symbol and more like a being. You planned this carefully, she said without turning toward him. Yes, he answered. You studied us. Yes. You allowed yourself to be captured. Yes. Each answer came steady, unshaken. The Empress finally turned to face him fully. Why reveal yourself? She asked. You could have continued hiding in shadow. We did not hide, he replied. We prepared. For what? She pressed. For the moment when strength alone would no longer decide the future. She stepped closer, examining him more carefully now that they were alone. His face carried exhaustion. Not weakness, but the weight of experience. You speak as if this war is already over, she said. It can be, he answered quietly. The Empress studied his expression, searching for deception. I have ruled for 30 cycles, she said. I have crushed revolts, dismantled rival factions, expanded this empire beyond what my ancestors believed possible. And yet, he said gently, you are unsure. Her eyes sharpened at that. You presume much, she said. No, he replied. I observe. The silence between them grew heavier. Outside the viewing wall, the distant flashes of disabled ships drifted like fading stars. You disabled our fleets instead of destroying them, she said slowly. Yes. You could have attacked the capital directly. Yes. You did not. No. She stepped closer still, until only a small space remained between them. Why? She demanded. The human held her gaze without hesitation. Because conquest is simple, he said. Anyone strong enough can conquer. But building something that lasts requires restraint. The Empress felt the truth of that statement cut deeper than any weapon. For centuries we believed fear maintained order, she said, almost to herself. Fear does maintain order, he replied. For a time. And what replaces it? She asked quietly. Respect, he answered. She let out a slow breath. You expect me to simply change my empire, she said. I expect you to see what is already changing, he corrected. A faint tremor shook the palace structure as distant engines roared in orbit. Dominion commanders were scrambling to regain formation. But confidence had shifted. Uncertainty moved through ranks that had never known it before. Your people are not attacking, she said. They are showing capability. Yes, he said. And giving you space to choose. She studied him again, and for the first time she noticed something subtle in his eyes. Not hatred. Not pride. Grief. You lost much, she said. Yes. And yet you stand here asking for balance instead of revenge. He looked toward the stars briefly before answering. Revenge ends one war, he said. It begins another. The Empress felt something unfamiliar stir inside her chest. A doubt not in her power, but in her legacy. If I refuse, she asked softly. The human did not hesitate. Then we end this empire, he said calmly. No anger. No threat in tone. Just fact. The simplicity of it unsettled her more than rage would have. You are certain of victory? She asked. No, he answered honestly. We are certain of survival. The honesty struck her harder than confidence would have. Before she could respond, the chamber doors suddenly burst open. 3 high-ranking Dominion generals entered without formal announcement. Their armor marked with emergency command insignia. Your Majesty, the lead general said sharply. This discussion has gone on long enough. The Empress's expression hardened instantly. You were ordered to leave, she said coldly. The fleet situation is unstable, the general continued, ignoring the warning. Morale is weakening. We must execute the human and launch full assault. The human remained still, watching silently. The second general stepped forward. If we show hesitation, other sectors will question our strength. The Empress felt the weight of tradition pushing against her decision. Centuries of dominance demanded a display of power. We cannot negotiate with prey, the first general said firmly. At that word, the human's eyes sharpened slightly. Prey does not disable entire fleets without firing killing shots, he said calmly. The generals turned toward him with visible anger. Silence, one snapped, raising his weapon slightly. The chamber atmosphere shifted instantly. Tension thick as storm clouds. The Empress looked from her generals to the human soldier. On one side stood history. On the other stood evolution. And she understood now that this moment would define more than a battle. It would define what her empire became next. Outside, the human fleet still waited. Not attacking. Not retreating. Watching. And inside the throne chamber, something far more dangerous than war was forming. Division. The silence inside the throne chamber did not last long. It shattered. The lead general's weapon rose fully this time, its energy core glowing bright blue as it charged. "Your Majesty, step away from the human," he ordered. The Empress did not move. "You forget your place," she said coldly. The general's jaw tightened. "No," he replied. "You have forgotten yours." The words hung in the air like poison. Two more generals stepped forward, their armor locking into combat stance. This was no longer advice. It was rebellion. Outside the palace, Dominion fleet commanders were already receiving unauthorized override signals. Ships were repositioning without central command approval. Weapons were powering up across orbital platforms. The coup had begun. Inside the chamber, the human soldier shifted slightly, just enough to place himself half a step closer to the Empress. The general noticed. "Guards," he barked. But the royal guards hesitated. They were sworn to protect the throne. Not the generals. The Empress understood instantly what was happening. "If you fire," she said calmly, "you divide this empire permanently." "It is already divided," the general snapped. "You hesitate while enemies surround our capital. You speak of evolution like weakness." The human finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "Fear is guiding you." The general swung his weapon toward him. "Silence, animal." The weapon discharged. A sharp blast of compressed plasma tore across the chamber. But the Empress moved first. She stepped forward instinctively. And in the same heartbeat, the human soldier reacted faster than any Dominion I could track. He turned, grabbing the Empress and pulling her behind him as the blast struck his armored chest. The impact echoed like thunder. Energy rippled across his suit. The smell of scorched metal filled the air. He staggered one step but did not fall. The chamber froze in shock. The generals had not expected resistance. Certainly not from the prisoner. "Impossible," one whispered. The human straightened slowly, smoke rising from his damaged armor. Red liquid dripped from beneath the cracked plating. Blood. Not glowing alien fluid. Not synthetic coolant. Blood. The Empress stared at it in disbelief. He had taken the shot meant for her. "You would protect me?" she asked quietly. The human did not turn to look at her. "If you fall," he said calmly, "there is no one left to choose peace." The lead general growled in frustration and fired again. But this time the royal guards reacted. They moved as one, raising their own weapons and blocking the second blast with defensive shields. Energy collided in a flash of white light. The chamber erupted into chaos. Guards loyal to the throne clashed with soldiers loyal to the rebelling generals. Weapons fired. Energy bursts struck pillars and shattered crystal panels. The throne room became a battlefield. Outside in orbit, Dominion ships began firing without unified command. Some targeting the human fleet. Others trying to disable fellow Dominion vessels transmitting unauthorized signals. Confusion spread through the ranks like wildfire. The human fleet responded instantly. But not with destruction. They deployed precision strikes against the rebelling command ships only. Disabling engines. Severing communication arrays. Isolating the coup leaders from the rest of the fleet. "They are helping us," one loyal commander whispered in disbelief. Inside the throne chamber, the lead general lunged forward in desperation, blade drawn. "For the strength of the Dominion," he shouted. The human intercepted him mid-strike, grabbing his wrist with surprising force. Even wounded, his strength was undeniable. "Strength without wisdom destroys itself," the human said quietly. He twisted the weapon free and pushed the general back without killing him. The Empress watched everything unfold in seconds that felt like hours. Her empire was tearing itself apart not because of invasion, but because of fear. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Stand down," she commanded. Some soldiers hesitated. Others froze completely. The lead general tried to speak again, but the human's firm grip held him in place. The Empress raised her voice once more, louder, stronger. "Stand down now." The authority in her tone carried decades of command. One by one, weapons lowered. The loyal guards restrained the rebelling generals. Energy discharges faded into silence. The throne chamber stood damaged but intact. The human released the general and stepped back, breathing heavier now. The blood at his side spreading slowly across the floor. The Empress turned to face him fully. "You risked your life for mine," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied simply. "You could have let them kill me." "Yes." "And then," she asked. "Then the human fleet would have ended everything," he answered calmly. The weight of that truth settled over her. He had protected her not out of loyalty, but out of strategy. Out of belief that she could change what came next. Outside the viewing wall, the Kueline ships were now drifting powerless. The human fleet held steady. Not advancing. Not attacking. Waiting for her decision again. The Empress looked at the blood on the floor, at the wounded human who had just shielded her from her own generals. For the first time in her reign, she understood something clearly. Power was not domination. Power was choice. And she had just witnessed which side truly understood survival. She stepped toward him, her voice steady. "This empire will not fall to fear," she said. "And it will not fall to pride." She turned toward the shattered throne and then back toward the stars beyond the glass. "It will evolve." The human met her gaze once more. And in that moment, something unspoken formed between them. Not alliance yet. Not trust fully. But recognition. Two leaders standing at the edge of a new future. Bound not by conquest, but by survival. The throne chamber stood scarred but silent. Smoke drifted slowly toward the high ceiling. Fragments of shattered crystal reflected the distant light of burning ships in orbit. The rebelling generals had been taken away under guard. The wounded human soldier remained standing despite the damage to his armor. And the Empress understood that this was the most important moment of her reign. Outside the palace walls, the people of the Dominion were beginning to see the flashes in the sky. Rumors were spreading through communication networks. Questions were forming. For centuries, the empire had projected absolute strength. Now it faced its first true test. Not against an enemy, but against itself. The Empress walked slowly toward the massive viewing wall once more. The human followed at a respectful distance. Beyond the glass, the human fleet shimmered like a quiet storm waiting beyond the horizon. Dominion ships were regrouping under loyal command. Damage was contained. But the illusion of invincibility was gone. She spoke without turning. "If I order an attack now, what happens?" The human answered calmly. "Your outer fleets collapse within the hour. Your inner shields fall shortly after. Your capital burns." His voice did not carry threat. Only calculation. "And if I stand down?" she asked. "Then this becomes the last battle between our species," he said. The simplicity of his answer carried more weight than 1,000 war speeches. The Empress closed her eyes briefly, feeling the gravity of centuries pressing against her decision. Her ancestors had built this empire through domination. Through fear. Through conquest. But fear had just nearly destroyed her from within. She turned back toward the center of the chamber where her throne stood cracked and damaged. It suddenly looked smaller than before. She stepped toward it slowly. The human watched carefully, unsure of what she would choose. The remaining guards held their breath. The Empress reached up to her head and removed the imperial crown. The symbol of absolute rule. The mark of dominance over 1,000 worlds. Gasps filled the chamber. She held the crown in her hands for a long moment. Then she placed it gently on the fractured throne. "Power built only on fear fractures under pressure," she said clearly. Her voice steady and carrying across the hall. "We have ruled through strength," she continued. "But strength without growth becomes weakness." She turned toward the human fully now. You said you came to give me a choice, she said. Yes, he replied quietly. I choose evolution, she declared. The words felt like a shockwave through the room. Outside in orbit, Dominion fleet commanders received a direct transmission from the Empress herself. All ships stand down, her voice echoed across every channel. Cease hostile engagement immediately. For a moment, no one moved. Then one by one, Dominion weapons powered down. Energy cannons dimmed. Target locks disengaged. The human fleet responded seconds later. Their ships shifting position slightly. Not advancing. Not retreating. Mirroring the gesture. Inside the chamber, the Empress stepped closer to the human soldier. You said you were certain of survival, she said. Yes. Not of victory, she added. No, he confirmed. She studied his wounded side, the blood still visible through cracked armor. You could have destroyed us, she said softly. Yes. Why did you not? He met her gaze without hesitation. Because survival is stronger when it is shared, he answered. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was not tension that filled the space. It was possibility. Outside, the stars no longer flickered with weapon fire. They simply shone. The Empress turned toward the communication console once more. Open channel to the human fleet, she ordered. A live transmission connected instantly. Multiple human commanders appeared on the central display, calm and focused. The Empress stood tall without her crown. The Zyrith Dominion acknowledges the strength of humanity, she said clearly. We will not continue a cycle that leads only to extinction. She paused briefly, then added. We propose balance. The human commanders exchanged brief glances before nodding in agreement. The soldier beside her allowed himself the smallest shift in posture, relief hidden beneath discipline. But the Empress was not finished. She turned slightly so that both her court and the human fleet could hear her next words. This empire will change, she said. We will rebuild not through domination, but through alliance. Some guards looked uncertain. Some looked inspired. But none challenged her. Because they had witnessed what fear had almost cost them. The human soldier stepped forward slightly. This is not surrender, he said calmly. It is evolution. The Empress allowed herself the faintest nod. She had demanded that he remove his helmet to reveal his face. But in the end, it was her empire that had removed its mask. Beyond the capital world, human ships and Dominion vessels now drifted side by side. Former enemies suspended in fragile peace. The galaxy had expected war.